it's so culture specific, and his films really didn't owe anything to Hollywood at all. And despite that, it ran. I mean, America loved his, his first film, and it's totally about India specific. In fact, Calcutta specific, Bengal specific, and yet it transcends culture. It just shows that the commonalities are more than differences.
Absolutely.
And there is so much, like a timeless quality about it. It's still, when you see it, there is a contemporary read. You feel that it's speaking to me. There is something in that film for me. And that's why even today's generation, people feel moved and influenced. Filmmaker and viewers alike find something of interest.
That is still relevant.
That is still very relevant, yes.
And people who have seen the films in the past and are reviewing them 20, 30, even more years later, come out with still that perception because they have travelled through time.
It's amazing.
Yeah. We have been really happy with how, as you say, the films have woven their web of magic across different generations. And in fact, Ray was one of the first people whose work was featured in the London Film Festival. We're about to have our 57th London Film Festival, and he was there right at the very beginning of that history, and the magic continues. So it was really new ground that he trod as a filmmaker. He was telling a new story, new for India and new for the European continent that took on the mantle of showing these films. And he was the person who introduced you to cinema in many senses. When he was working on The World of Apu back in 1955, he was creating what we now know as the Apu trilogy, but that was the final part of that trilogy. And he invited you to take the part of Aparna, the bride of Apu, as a young girl who, if I understand it correctly, had had no acting experience. Can you tell us about
Not just acting experience, we were not even allowed to see films. So I haven't even seen a film, because it was, unlike today, which has such popular acceptance, it was still a very new idea, films, and it wasn't really thought of as a good profession. So I hadn't seen any film. And I think he needed a very young person, because he was looking for Apu's child bride, because those days girls got married at a very young age. And so he was looking specifically for a very young person. So I think he did scouts, perhaps in front of my school. Somebody may have followed me home, but I don't know. But the phone rang, and he spoke to my father, and he said that he would like to have an audition and do a screen test. My father agreed, because, like I said, it was not considered a good thing to work in films, but he was different. As you said earlier, that he definitely brought in a different way of making film. He pioneered a different way of making film and compelled the world to change its perception of Indian cinema. Before him, the films were theatrical, the background music was very loud, the dialogues were, very verbose. So he changed all that, and he spoke the universal language of cinema. So my father, already a couple of films of his were released, so my father felt that was a great honor to work with Ray. So he agreed, but my school didn't.
Oh dear.
My school principal felt that I would be a very bad influence on other girls and asked me to leave. I mean, to choose between this or that. So my father, being a true Bengali, and of course I wasn't asked, decided for me and said she's going to leave the school. And from Bengali medium school, I had to go to an English medium school at the age of 30, which is not very young.